Have you ever wondered how sad it is that your son's only sexual outlet is tossing off to magazines in the bathroom? Oh, Gary! Oh my God! Man, I never tossed off to anything! You told me you were combing your hair. I was! Welcome to Hey Guys Podcast. I'm Rob, this is Liam, and this week we watched 1985's Weird Science, written and directed by John Hughes, a film about two 15-year-old high school losers who, by some form of magic hacking, managed to create Kelly LeBrock so they can act out their wildest fantasies. The problem is, they're 15 and she's 23, so wild fantasies become showering with your clothes on and underage drinking. Now, when I underage drank, I usually showered with my clothes on after, so somebody's doing it wrong somewhere. And this also brings up a fact of ownership. They are underage, so they can't really do anything with Lisa because they made her 23, but they technically own her. I mean, the legal department would have a field day with this, I'm sure. In classic 80s style, our intrepid heroes, who have the whiniest voices I have ever heard, managed to become school legends in 48 hours. Showing how cool they are by standing up to Wes from Mad Max and Michael Berryman straight out of The Hills of Ice. Although the coolness seems to drift away pretty quickly when Wyatt once again grovels to Chet in front of his new girlfriend. Oh, and finally, something I have never noticed until this viewing. When in the fuck did Wyatt and Chet get a sister?
Oh, yeah, I guess they did, yeah.
Yeah, I had to...
Well, right, the sister... Because this links into an issue I had. Was the sister only a thing so that they could explain why they had bras on their head? I assume that was the only reason. Because, don't get me wrong, it's messed up wearing your sister's bras on your head. And I don't have a sister, so I don't know. But then again, I've never worn my mum's bra on my head. But I have to assume that wearing your sister's bra is somehow less gross than wearing your mum's bra. I had
that written down at the beginning when they had, why are they wearing their mum's bras? How sick is it wearing your mum's bra? But then, the whole sister thing is so random because watching this film over and over. I've seen it multiple times. I can't tell you how many. Not loads, but not few. If that makes sense.
So, we'll go for 6. That sounds like 6.
Yeah. So 6. Chet goes to Wyatt and his new girlfriend in what I always assumed was the parents' bedroom because it was a little. But then when I watched it today, I was like, no. Because that's got dolls and horses, and that's like a 4-poster girls' bed. And then I rewound it, right? I rewound it to when Chet's coming up the stairs, and Chet is like, as long as my room's okay, as long as my room's okay. And you pass a family portrait that people have drawn mustaches on. Yeah. And there's 5 people on there. There's the 2 parents, Chet, Wyatt, and a girl. So randomly,
it's the weirdest thing is that the fact that it's taken you 6 viewings to realise that they had a sister. And I can't remember, because I've only seen this film once before, and I could hardly remember anything about it other than the big plot points and obviously Kelly LeBrock. But at the start of the film, obviously, when they start their computer wizardry, which is outrageously 80s, by the way. We'll get to that in just a moment. The kind of shit you could get away with only in the 80s when it came to computers, because nobody knew shit about computers. So we're just like, we'll pretend they're kind of like magic. But when they were sitting there with the bras on their head, the first thing I was like, fuck, man, are they wearing their mum's bra on their head? And my wife immediately went, no, it's their sisters. I was like, they've got a sister. It's like she picks up on these details, which apparently just wash over us because we're too busy. When's Kelly LeBrock going to show up on screen? And Bethan's like, I wonder where the sister is. It's bizarre.
How did Bethan notice the sister then? Is there any mention to a sister, or is it just she?
It must be at the start. There is a reference to the sister at the start of the film. Yeah. She is referenced earlier in the film, because when I mentioned the fact about the mum's bra, she's like, oh, it's probably the sisters. I was like, they've got a sister. It's like, yeah, got mentioned. So there is a sister in the film, and legitimately, I watched it all the way through because obviously I realized at that point that they had a sister. I was like, did she show up later in the film? No, it's just in the picture. And I came to the conclusion that it's literally just so they could say the bras were his sisters rather than his mum's, because it's a little less weird. Yeah. But then there's so much weirdness in this film. I'm not sure if him wearing his mum's bra on his head would be the strangest thing that goes on in this movie, let's be honest.
So it's not as big a piece of movie trivia than I thought then, because obviously Bethan picked it up and
apparently
so many times.
if you pay attention to the film, it's made abundantly clear right at the start of the film.
Let's stick to clothing for a minute, right? When they're doing their, again, magic hacking, I'm going to stick with magic hacking because that's all.
Well, that's the only answer. It's basically a cross between War Games and Poltergeist. Yeah. That's the only thing I could come up with. And like we were watching it, and we're like, what is that? Is it a printer or a scanner which is making the magical woman? Like when they go into the computer, I don't know what's going on. And they don't know what's going on. I think they just assume that they're drawing power from, I don't know where, the computer lab or the internet. I don't know in 1985.
Like, who did they hack into? But sorry, go.
The guy with all the tapes. Yeah. Well, they were hacking into the dude with the tapes. So what the fuck?
Stick to the clothes for a minute. When they're doing that hacking and it kept going back to Gary, I had to write down, can somebody buy Gary a new shirt? Why did his shirt have 2 holes in it?
Well, that again, these are the things that my wife notices, not I. But she was just like, why does every guy, like, all their clothes have holes in them? It wasn't just that T-shirt. There just seems to be tons of clothing with holes in this film. Although it's bizarre that of all the clothing, one of the most iconic looks of the 1980s, you think Kelly LeBrock with the underwear and the grey jumper and stuff, and you think, well, no, I'm going to go straight to Gary's tatty T-shirt.
Yeah, but I'm trying to do it. I'm trying to do it linear, right? Because that iconic look for Kelly LeBrock was right at the end, and we will get to the fact.
No, it's not. It's not right at the end. It's when she first appears.
No,
there's two iconic looks. There's the one when she first bursts through the door. Again, not quite sure what's happening there, but she literally bursts through the door, and she's wearing the grey top, which kind of rides up when she kind of puts her hands up, and you just see like a little bit of underboob, which was a big deal back in '85. And she's wearing those little underwear that not Gary, Wyatt ends up wearing later on. And then it's the very last shot of the film when she's wearing the Shermer Illinois high school top and the kind of very classic 80s kind of socks and trainers and all that jazz.
With the Rocky theme tune playing.
Yeah. Again, the tone of this film goes back and forth quite a lot. And at its worst moments, it's very, very goofy. And it's almost a shame because by the end, this film really goes off the deep end towards the end of the film. Like in the second half, the hand breaks off and it really goes bonkers with like the rocket coming up through the floor, the room being changed blue, Chet being turned into a shit monster or whatever the hell it's supposed to be. And it was like, oh, this is all like, it's pretty cool towards the end of the film. And then you have that kind of like, they all hit their hands on their head and fall over at the same time. And it's kind of John Hughes comedy at its worst, that kind of like synchronized physical comedy, which I can't get on board with. There's a few moments in this film. It's like, people would say it's problematic. I actually think Gary, when they go to that really bizarre club where it has the most interesting clientele, you've got this like the hottest girl possibly in the world, Kelly LeBrock in 1985. She said, I want to go partying. You think, you go to any nightclub, any bar, and she goes to a bar with just the strangest collection of middle-aged people I've ever seen. And after 2 bourbons, Gary's suddenly doing his best kind of black guy voice. And I tell you what, it's not actually bad. It's not bad. He does a relatively decent job. The problem is they run that joke into the fucking ground. It's like when they're in the bar, it's still kind of funny. When they're in the car afterwards and he's still
my nuts are in my asshole.
And it feels like he's leaning into it more. I hate that bit.
I think that was just him being drunk at that point. I'm not too sure if he was trying to do his black guy voice.
Oh, he's 100% doing a black guy voice. Oh, it's like one step away from doing. Remember in Airplane when they ask everyone on the plane
jive.
Dude, he is one notch on the ladder down from doing jive, but I think he's doing his best. And like I said, I actually think he's quite good in that scene, but they run it for far too long. And it's a bit of a shame because a once funny scene becomes very annoying. And as you mentioned in the intro, this film has some very, very annoying voices in it. I mean, Anthony Michael Hall, he's occasionally annoying. Mitchell Smith, or Ilan Mitchell Smith, how do you pronounce it?
Is it Ilan? I always thought it was Ian, but it's Ilan, isn't it?
It's Ilan.
Yeah.
So it almost sounds you just need an extra L and it'd be very Welsh almost kind of thing. Ilan. But I'm just going to call him Mitchell Smith, so we'll just deal with it that way. But his voice as Wyatt Donnelly is so fucking annoying. Like, don't get me wrong, Bill Paxton's chair is just the worst. But if I was his older brother, I'm like, I might bully him as well. He's quite annoying in this film.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good thing, that you actually buy them as geeks.
Oh, yeah. And you buy them as geeks. I never thought they were 15, by the way. Well, obviously they're not. They're like 45. But but yeah, so he's got to put on a whinier voice to sound younger. I appreciate all of that. It was funny, right?
Was he actually putting on a voice for this? Then do you think?
I think he was. He had to have been. There's no way that was
I know.
voice.
See, I don't think anyone chooses to put that voice on. I think that had to just be his voice because it's not like high pitched like a kid. It's just whiny.
Yeah, like when he said Lisa or get everything. Oh my god, yeah, his voice started to get annoying. Good, let's actually we brushed on it. Let's go to the magic hacking and we can get it out of the way, right? So they've hacked into I don't know NORAD or whatever for more power through the phone line. Okay, that's fine. Apparently they
fine, sure.
they got their more power because all of a sudden those two dudes were sweating like animals. Did you see how much sweat was dripping off Wyatt?
Yeah, it was a very odd shot of two 15-year-old boys with bras on their head being covered in sweat. But everything about that sequence is quite bizarre. But as I said, it was like you could get away with really goofy computer stuff right up until like the mid-90s, right up, and I think the last movie which really leaned into this from a visual perspective was probably Hackers. Yeah, Hackers. Like what was it? 2 years before you had the Lawnmower Man. Everyone forgot it's in the computer, so nobody because up until I'd say the mid-90s. Nobody had a home computer. Nobody had a PC. Obviously, nobody had phones. When I grew up, when I left high school, only one guy I knew had a computer, and of course, he was the Asian guy. We were living in a time of stereotypes. I don't know what to tell you, but none of us had computers. So when you saw this stuff on screen, and especially in the 80s, where really computers were from the future, beyond playing Pong, most people had no concept of really what a computer was or what it could do, and that included professionally. There weren't computers in most offices either. So you could get away with any the computer's got out of hand and suddenly it's turned into poltergeist. And people would just go, I'll accept that. I don't know what's going on with these computers either. This could happen. I don't know.
That's where I was questioning the program he had for the 80s, where he's able to put pictures of like Einstein and all of a sudden she is a genius and things like that. But then would they just do it? Do you remember when you were a kid and you were making potions and you were getting anything out of the fridge? You're mixing bleach with olive oil. Oh, this is going to be a great potion. That's basically what they're mixing anything they could. But then they obviously, again, going back to he definitely got a sister because they grabbed the doll and then they hooked the doll up with crocodile. I was going to say crocodile clips.
Well, that was the key bit, wasn't it? Because they forgot the doll second time round. And the crocodile clips were kind of vaguely waving over the top of a picture of a missile. And that's why they got a missile instead of Kelly LeBrock. So I'm not sure if they got like a really sexy, really intelligent missile, but whatever. But the point is, if you redid this film now, obviously there would have to be numerous changes. But when it comes to actually creating a girl with a computer, it's bizarre because obviously technology has moved on so far in the last, nearly 40 years. But the other end of that spectrum is you would actually have to explain it a lot more because everyone understands computers now to a certain extent. I'm not pretending to know everything about computers, but everyone has a general understanding of what computers can do and what they can achieve. So even though it's 40 years later, you'd have to really explain why this is happening. Whereas back in the 80s, you'd just be like, oh, well, it's just computers and magic and you're off to the races. And the quicker we can get Kelly LeBrock on screen, the better as far as everyone was concerned.
If they remade it now, it wouldn't be computers with it. It would be some sort of pulling her out of like I don't know, some sort of alternate dimension or some where they're all.
It would have to be magic.
Yeah,
it would have to just be. Well, I don't know. Actually, no. Because weird science, I feel like such a big part of it is creating the girl with a computer, like creating him with something. But I think because it's wish fulfillment, like in the to the nth degree. For 15-year-old boys, the idea of being able to create the perfect woman who's yours and yours to do with as you please. I know that sounds gross, but spoiler alert: boys indeed are gross, especially 15-year-old boys. I still think it would have to be via a computer for it to work, to have that wish fulfillment, even though it couldn't happen, just to have it kind of linked to the real world. Just like, imagine if we could create a fucking awesome Kelly LeBrock with our computers. Yeah. I think that's why it'd be needed rather than just, I don't know, fucking magic. Yeah. But hey, you can't argue with the results. No. Kelly LeBrock, man, oh my days, she is smoking hot.
Thank you as well for bringing up 15-year-old boys are gross, right? Because if any 15-year-old boy made Kelly LeBrock, okay, they would be doing things that you're not allowed to do in a film. Like, well, I'm sorry, right? Because that's the problem with this film. It's not a problem. Thankfully, they didn't go down a horrible route. But
yes,
that's the thing, isn't it? They've made a woman who's 23. She's sexy as hell. If they want to shower her, they want to see her naked, then they go in with their clothes on. But the 15-year-old boys who have been tossing off to magazines in the bathroom, things like that. And I don't want to make this sound like it's just me and I'm gross, but she'd be on her knees pretty quick, wouldn't she? If it was proper.
Well, I know what you mean. Well, the thing is, I mean, even back in '85, some people try and criticize the film, and obviously the criticisms go both ways. But some people suggest that the film, considering the premise, is actually quite chaste, and in many respects, it is. You know, they kind of get the awkward boy thing out the way really early, like. And I think that's the way they kind of try and make it believable. The first thing that they do is go and have a shower with her. Like, you know, that is a pretty gross thing to do. But you got to remember, like, 15 in '85 isn't the same as 15 now, because the internet's changed everything. And 15, when I was younger, I was clueless as fuck when I was 15. Yeah. Super clueless. And the fact of the matter is, even if I created if you put a really confident, really beautiful 23-year-old woman who looked like Kelly LeBrock in front of me when I was 15, I would have shit the bed. I wouldn't know what the fuck to do. Yeah. And I think the important thing is the fact that there's two of them. It's like, you know, it's just not a matter of, oh, get it down on your knees. You're there with your friend as well. It's like when they're in the shower together. It's like, you know, they don't, oh, we'll take turns.
So basically, you're making me sound like the terrible person.
Maybe. Well, no, I think you're kind of relating it to maybe modern day. I don't know, but I think back to myself as a 15-year-old.
I would have run and hid. Like,
yeah, exactly.
You know, today, right? I'm married with a kid. If a woman came onto me now, I'd run the other way. I wouldn't know what to do. Like, I totally. But what I'm saying is, in a gross 15-year-old mind, all right, she's confident, that's great. They go in the shower room, but after about, I don't know, 10 hours of realizing, as she said, you own me, you do what I do, what you say. I'm sorry.
Maybe, but the fact of the matter is, I'm glad they didn't go that way. And more importantly, this is fundamentally a John Hughes film. And I think that is actually the issue with this film and why it's not one of the best John Hughes films. I do like this film, and it is absolutely bonkers. But the reason it's not is because you get those kind of like John Hughes fundamentals where so much of it is about character and about kind of like, you know, learning your lessons and stuff. That is included in this film, but it always bashes up against the need for this kind of like sci-fi nonsense. And especially in the second half, when it goes truly bonkers in the second half and doesn't really feel like a John Hughes film anymore. And then they kind of try and rein it in, and they have the relationships with the other girls. And obviously they're learning that, you know, they've got no business with a girl as beautiful or as old as Kelly LeBrock, and that they, you know, need to find confidence in themselves and all that jazz. That's all kind of just there at the end. Like the relationship with the two other girls whose names I've forgotten, I do apologize. It kind of just feels like it's force fed. Like, well, you've got to have that John Hughes moment at the end of the film.
Do you think as well? They stood up to the mutants, and the girls liked them and was like, oh yeah, that was really nice of you, thank you. And then in the space of, I said it in my intro, in the space of, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours, Chet comes home. All of a sudden, Wyatt's whiny as hell. I'm sorry, Wyatt. I'll give you whatever you... I'm sorry, Chet. I'll give you whatever you need, Chet. I'll do whatever you want. Like, she just saw this dude stand up to a guy with a shotgun.
Yeah.
And now, like, they should have had
admittedly, like, Chet is low-key out of his fucking mind. Like,
he's totally... But for a John Hughes film, they should have had Wyatt realise that he...
Oh, no, I agree.
And he stands up to his brother. The fact that he just turned Wyatt again into a whiny bitch straight away kind of takes it away from the film.
No, it does a little bit. And I was thinking the exact same thing. When he shows back up and Wyatt kind of reverted to type, like, to use your term, to become a whiny little bitch again. And it's hard... Whatever you might think of that term, it's hard to argue with it because he is whiny and he is a little bit of a bitch. But it was only in those final moments, because I was thinking that the exact same thing. I was like, come on, dude, you've got to stand up to Chet. Chet, the first thing he did was go upstairs and put a shotgun into a stranger's face. Like, he put, like, obviously he knows Gary, but he's there in bed with his girlfriend. He doesn't know this girl. He immediately sticks a shotgun, like, up her fucking nose. Chet is insane.
It's okay, though, because when he bonked him on the head, did you see that rubber gun bend?
Oh yeah, you did, yeah. So yeah, it was okay, but I know what you mean. You feel like everyone's, and by that point in the film, it's all about the lessons learned and stuff.
Yeah.
You think Wyatt had learned to kind of like step up to his brother, and I don't know, maybe the only reason I could think that they went that route is because they wanted to have that interaction between Lisa and Chet, where she turns him into a shit monster. So if Wyatt stands up to him, then he's learning his lesson by Wyatt standing up to him. But of course, if he's still bullying him, then Lisa has to step in and turn him into the shit monster. So all I can assume is they're like, listen, we're getting the shit monster into the film one way or another.
I think they should have done the shit monster at some point, because Lisa could have done that, by the by. But it should have been Wyatt earning Chet's respect by standing up to him.
From a narrative perspective, I agree.
Yeah, it should have absolutely been that. The other thing being, how flat could they get Bill Paxton's head? The top of it, that was level. That fucking head was level.
It's the weirdest haircut I've ever seen. It's legitimately one of the most because you see like big, especially back in the 80s. Obviously, you get like the big perm hair, you get the flock of seagulls, all these like bizarre haircuts. But this was like the most low key, disturbing haircut I think I've ever seen, where the side was just a little bit too long. The top is somehow looks both really short and long. I don't know how they did it, but again, we mentioned it a couple of weeks ago where Bill Paxton, obviously for the Titanic podcast, we've had him in a few films where we both love Bill Paxton. When he's brilliant, he is brilliant. But sometimes, and I think it's just in his nature, or was in his nature, I do apologize, to really swing for the fences. When it doesn't work, it really doesn't work. And I don't think he works particularly well in this film. And it's my issue with this kind of contradiction of tones where on the one side you've got the John Hughes film, and on the other side you've got this like bizarro science fiction film. And make no mistake, Bill Paxton's in the second half. He's in the latter of those for sure.
If they did this film now, well, technically they did, right? Because randomly, I'm going to put this, relate this to another film that you never thought I would have related it to. If they did this now, Bill Paxton's character, the way he acted, would be closeted.
Mm-hmm.
He would be a closeted man. Like, the reason why he's doing all this lashing out and stuff is because he's like...
It might be, yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever seen Road Trip? Mm-hmm. No, not Road Trip. Oh, fuck, not Road Trip. What was it called? It's Seth Green played an Amish man. They nick Jason Marston's car.
Oh, no, I know the one you mean, but no, I haven't seen it.
No? So, hang on. Seth, I'm doing this whilst we're talking right now because I need to relate it.
Well, he's looking that up. I mean, I will mention the fact that, I keep coming back to the fact that this is a John Hughes film. And I think that is important because, whatever you might think of this film, the one thing it is mega iconic. It's just this, like Kelly LeBrock in particular has just become this part of 80s culture. And I'd make the argument that this movie arguably made her the de facto cinematic sex symbol of the 80s. Despite the fact that the movie's not actually all that good, she's in many respects bigger than the movie. But the impact, and I think I mentioned this on the Home Alone podcast, you can't overstate just how much of an impact John Hughes had on both 80s and certainly our kind of, I guess, our kind of concept of what the 80s were, certainly in America and Chicago as well on screen. Whenever I think of Chicago on the screen, I always think of John Hughes films, but he penned 17 screenplays in the 80s. Yeah. Supposedly, he wrote this in 2 days. And if you go back over his writer-director credits for the 80s, he did National Lampoon's Vacation in 83, 16 Candles in 84, Breakfast Club in 85, Euro Vacation in 85, Weird Science in 85, Pretty in Pink in 86, Ferris Bueller in 86, Planes, Trains and Automobiles in 87, Uncle Buck in 89, Christmas Vacation 89, and if you're pushing into the early 90s, Home Alone in 90, and Beethoven and Home Alone 2 in 92. His run is up there with fucking anyone's. It's absolutely outrageous that his input was that consistent and just that much, just so much, so many screenplays, dude. Jesus Christ.
Right. It was called Sex Drive. Right.
Oh God, that wasn't worth it. I know that film. That looked terrible.
Yeah. No, so it's called Sex Drive. But you had James Marsden playing the over ambitious brother. He was a bully. He would beat up his brother. And he turned out to be. This basically what I'm saying is, if they would have remade this film now, you would have had the character from. You have a Chet from Weird Science become James Marsden's character in Sex Drive, where he became a closeted guy that moved on. Do you know? And then
yeah. Well, I think the important thing is that if they made the film now, I mean, the obvious thing is it would have to be very different. I think everyone agrees with that. And I know they were like, I think Universal were planning on making a Weird Science remake with you. I think it was with Joel Silver, who produced this film as well, but with Michael Bacall writing it, who did Scott Pilgrim and 21 Jump Street. I think that's a great place to start, actually. And I think they were going to try and distinguish it from this film by making it a more quote unquote adult film. Obviously, that made sense in 2013, probably doesn't now. However, I'm of the mindset that we are inching back, that we've had this kind of era of oversensitivity and stuff like that. And I think that we are getting towards a period where if somebody came out and made a proper, I don't give a fuck R-rated comedy, I think the world is ready for it. And I think it would do gangbusters. You notice with stuff like, at the moment, people are just like apologizing less. Like I'm sure you noticed, I think it was last week, somebody brought up Tropic Thunder. And he said, I'm not apologizing for Tropic Thunder. It was just, this was my artistic vision for it. And you feel like a year or two ago, people would have fucking apologized for it if somebody brought it up. And I feel like there's a shift now. Everyone's kind of had a tits full of this like overly kind of like angelic response to everything. Everyone's got to be sorry. Everybody gets kind of offended by everything. I think we're moving away from that. And I think now, if ever there was a perfect time for a Weird Science remake to sweep in, offend half the world, but do huge numbers, I actually think it's now, bizarrely enough. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think there's an opportunity for the next Weird Science, Hangover, Tropic Thunder, whatever the fuck you want to pick.
You brought up Tropic Thunder, you brought up RDJ, right? How much of all of the drugs was he on in this film?
Oh, he's clearly fucked. He's clearly fucked. Who's he get? Is it Robert Russler he's hanging around with as Max?
Robert Russler. What's going on with Robert Russler's face? That dude is fucking 50 if he's a day.
Oh, dude, I mean, he was exactly the same in, because for a start, I was like, what the fuck do I know him from? Of course, it's Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
And it was the same year. And if you go back and watch Nightmare on Elm Street, it's another one of those films where you're like, wait, he's supposed to be a fucking teenager in high school? Motherfucker, you look 30.
Do you know what I remember him from?
What's that?
Right? A film called Thrashing, right?
Oh, Thrashing, yeah, I remember Thrashing.
With Josh Brolin.
Yeah. The skateboarding film.
Skateboarding film.
Yeah, that dude, we should totally do that for the podcast. I have not seen that film for 30 years.
We should do a double feature.
Thrashing and Gleaming the Cube?
Yes.
Of course, yeah. Two truly terrible late 80s skateboarding and skateboard movies.
I always remember.
I was going to say skateboarding and... Sorry.
I always remember, Robert Russler. He was in that... It was you had a string in the early 90s of Stephen King made-for-TV movie.
Yeah. Like It was the famous one, but they also did The Stand and stuff.
Films. Made-for-TV movie films.
Hey, it's one of those made-for-TV movie films. Yeah. I can't wait to see it.
Today on TCM. No, I always remember him in that, is it Sometimes They Come Back? Where a bunch of greasers come back from the dead to take down, what was it, Tim Matheson. I
almost, for some odd reason, when you said that, I immediately went to quote, but it's Pet Sematary. Immediately came to my head, sometimes dead is better. I love that line. But it's from a completely different book and film, so I do apologize.
But yeah, so he's one of the greasers that comes back. And
he looks like a greaser.
He is a greaser.
Looks like. And again, you could argue that their characters are a little bit pointless, but you've got to have them vaguely being bullied by those two. I don't know, their idea of cool, maybe it's a 1985 thing. But the one thing they did to at the start of the film is, like they're looking at the girls and they're actually being quite pervy, Gary and Wyatt.
Yeah.
I've never heard that, pants them. Yeah. It just reminds me that can go wrong. And unless you are a monster, you can feel bad about it, because I've never been one for stuff like that. But for some odd reason, we were playing football and it was over the Rec in Cardiff. And one of my friends, there was a corner and everyone was like looking towards us and I was behind him and the Holy Spirit got me for some reason. And I just went to pants him. But the problem is, I fully pantsed him by accident. So the shorts and the underwear. And of course, he wasn't expecting, no one was expecting it. And it felt like it went on for such a long time. And of course, it's cold. He's probably not looking his best. And he's just standing there in front of all his friends, but also a bunch of strangers. And we're playing with men. And we weren't quite men at that time. So and he's just standing there with his dick out. And I'm there just looking at his bare ass. I'm like, wait, what the fuck? This has gone too far. And to this day, I still think back to that and feel bad about it. So, if you're going to pants someone, make sure you're committed.
Although, as well, you just said you've never used the word pants, and you've used it about 4 times.
Well, I don't know. I didn't know there was an official term, so I don't have an alternative. So as you've given it the term pants, I'm going to have to use that from now on, because otherwise I just keep saying, so I pulled his shorts down and then I pulled his pants down. But I guess it's weird because when I think of pants is an American term. When we say pants, we think of underwear. So I actually did pants him in the British sense, in so much that everything came off, rather than I was aiming for the American pants where I just wanted to take the shorts. But never mind, it is what it is.
So, let's go to stereotypes, right? And no more stereotype than, you've already said it, in that the bar that she wants. I mean, if you've already said, if Lisa wanted to go out, she's a 23-year-old, she looks like that, she should go to the club that Sarah Connor went to in Terminator. That neon.
Dude, that was exactly what I was thinking. Exactly what I was thinking.
But in the end, they go to this skeevy little, everybody's got a gun bar. But
then it doesn't look like the kind of place where everyone would have a gun. They've got guns, but everyone just kind of looks middle-aged. Like, it's the only thing. It reminds me of a bar I went to in Anchorage, in Alaska, of all places. We stopped there.
Welcome to Geography by Liam.
There we go. I just wanted to like grab a beer. We had like a bit of time before we got over to this museum. And I went in, and it was like, you know, that classic American kind of slightly dive sports bar, but it was on like the main strip. It was fine. But it had the weirdest selection of people I've ever seen in the bar. And it totally reminded me of that bar where you're like, what brings this collection of people together? But I guess the more important question is, why would Lisa picked that bar of all the bars?
Because you had the collection of people. You thought like that most of them are speaking jive. You had the guy that looked like not Chuck Berry, BB
King.
And then randomly you just got this one guy. Oh, dude, be a mix between an Italian and a Mexican for me, Dino.
Yeah, I don't know what I was like, is he supposed to be Italian? Is he supposed to be Spanish? Mexican? I don't know what the hell was going on there. It was another very
we can't get any more stereotypes. So do me a favor, be all of them.
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't know. It like all I can think is maybe she's just going based off like their concepts of where they think they should be going to a bar, but no, because she provide them with a Porsche, so they look the part for 1985 by 85 standards. So they got the suits, they're driving a Porsche, and they go to that bar. And I'm like, in all of Shermer, Illinois, and Shermer, Illinois famously is a fictional place. It's like the much more pleasant version of Derry, Maine, I suppose. But you would think that, considering it's a fictional town in Chicago, that they could have created a cooler bar than that. It's one of, for all the bizarre choices in this film, that's one of the major ones. Although it was so strange, right? We got to the end of the film, and I was telling Bethan that I was like, "Oh, Shermer, Illinois is not a real place." She goes, "Well, if it's not a real place, it's like, why are all the dudes so ugly, but all the girls there are so hot?" I was like, "Dude, Jay and Silent Bob said the exact same thing in Dogma. They were looking for Shermer, Illinois, because the dudes were all dweebs and all the girls were fucking hot. And like, we're going to go there and we're going to clean up. But Shermer, Illinois doesn't fucking exist. It's a town created by nerds."
You were talking so fast, I couldn't find the break to start. I had it going. Every time I hear Shermer, Illinois, or I read it, I always go back to fucking Dogma. You stole my thunder.
Sorry. Well, you can blame Bethan. It was Bethan's fault. She's the one who brought it up. I was like, dude, Jane, Silent Bob said the exact same thing. Got to the end of it was kind of like, why is like, I don't know, it always seems to be like, it's a weird thing to say, but Chinese people, like whenever I see them in Edinburgh, there's always like whatever dudes with like really hot girls. It's just one of those things you pick up. But Shermer, Illinois, this fictional town, clearly John Hughes was a nerd, because it's a town created by nerds where all the dudes are like just whatever guys and all the girls are smoking up. Like all the girls, they're not quite all fucking Kelly LeBrock, but they're still hotter than the guys they're with, 100%.
It makes me, you speak of the guys, right? It makes me think now that if I had bullies and it was Robert Downey Jr. and Robert Russler, slap them across the side of the head, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing they can do.
It's bizarre. They give a weird performance, but I thought all the performances in this film are kind of strange. I mean, it just feels like Anthony Michael Hall is just playing his, like, he just had a character for a while, didn't he? Like he was John Hughes's guy for a few films. I think he did 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, and this all back to back, and they all feel relatively similar. The only problem was, of course, is that Anthony Michael Hall after this decided that he didn't want to be typecast anymore, and he didn't disappear. He's still having an okay career in many respects, but he was just never the actor I think many people thought he was going to be in like the mid 80s, because I think he famously fell out with John Hughes on this film, so they never worked together. But it was around this time that he was offered, I think it was in 1987, he was offered the role of the starring role in Full Metal Jacket. like he'd been in conversation with Stanley Kubrick, but supposedly the negotiations went on for like 8 months. But a financial agreement couldn't be made, whatever. And instead, he ends up doing Johnny Be Good with Uma Thurman and working with Downey Jr. again. But that was like a critical and commercial flop. Whereas you think, man, if he had ended up actually playing was it Matthew Modine?
Matthew Modine, yeah.
Yeah. If he'd ended up playing it's not like Matthew Modine went on to become the biggest star in the world, but you just think it could have been a very different career if he had got the full Metal Jacket role. But it's strange how, despite the fact he's got this ongoing career, most people, I think, to this day, when you think of Michael Hall, you just think of him as in the John Hughes films.
Yeah.
For that kind of 3-year period.
Have you seen Anthony Michael Hall now these days?
Yes, yeah. Dude
looks like somebody who ate Anthony Michael Hall. That dude is a fucking tank. Like not in a fat way. He is just
big.
Like he was in the second Halloween, wasn't he? Where he played Paul Rudd's character, Tommy. The new Jamie Lee Curtis was Halloween Kills.
Yeah.
Halloween Kills for the 9th time, whatever they're called. And he is a tank. Like,
he's a big guy. And he looks like one of those guys who's done a lot of drinking. He just looks like one of the, and he obviously has. He's had his issues in the past, but he looks like a guy who's hit the bottle pretty hard at some point in his life. But yeah, it's strange that nowadays he does still pop up in relatively big films, but I don't think many people would pick him out of a crowd.
Last film I saw him in?
What was that?
Dead in Tombstone, where he plays Danny Trejo's brother.
Danny Trejo's brother?
Yes.
What is this like? Is this like an ironic, tangerine and lemon situation from Bullet Train?
Yeah, half brother.
Oh, okay.
Their mother was the same whore in the Wild West.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, no, they say in the film.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
He kills Danny Trejo. Danny Trejo goes to hell, makes a bargain with the devil, Mickey Rourke.
Obviously.
He's got 24 hours to come back and send his brother and the rest of the gang back to hell.
I mean, that actually sounds pretty dope. That actually sounds pretty dope.
Bad.
And Anthony Michael Hall is a good actor. He is a good actor.
You should see him in there, Mike. He does look the part. Like, he plays a greasy outlaw really well. He looks good.
I'll buy him as a greasy outlaw. I'm just not buying him as Danny Trejo's half brother.
I know.
I'm not buying him as his fucking 7th cousin. I'm just not having it.
When he tries to do speak some Spanish and like call him mijo or things like that.
Mind you, maybe Wyatt Donnelly. Sorry, not Wyatt Donnelly. That's his character's name. Maybe Mitchell Smith would have done a better, maybe slightly more convincing as Danny Trejo's half brother, perhaps.
Well, dude hasn't done anything because even his IMDb photo is his photo from Weird Science.
Well, it's weird because he's actually listed now as an American academic and former actor, but he's got a really interesting write-up here. So it's like he received his AB in medieval studies, of all things, from the University of California, and an MA in medieval studies from Fordham University. He received a doctoral degree from Texas A&M University in 2005. As of January 2020, he is an associate professor in the English language department at California State University. He publishes on chivalry in the latter Middle Ages, and he also publishes on cinematic television and video game versions of medieval culture. He's also involved in like tabletop gaming, so he's published on like Dungeons and Dragons, and he's a staff writer on Talk Wargaming and writes a column for Forces of Geek called Playing the Nerd. So he unlike Anthony Michael Hall, he embraced the whole geek culture thing, but he took it into his real life in a very serious way. So he's no longer an actor, but he is very much an academic and very much into medieval culture of all things. Yeah. Quite bizarre, but I thought it was quite interesting.
Do you know how much he got paid for Weird Science?
Fuck all, I can imagine.
150 grand.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah.
It all depends on the deal. I assume he didn't get any residuals off that. It's probably just 150 one and done, I suppose.
I think so, yeah. Like I would assume Anthony Michael Hall was probably on a bit more than that at that time. It's man, as you were talking about that then, I was just reading and he said, yeah, I chose to do something I love, even if it was Knights and Chivalry. Which is funny.
Pretty cool.
He went to do Chivalry after doing this film.
Well, that is the thing, and we are going to have to talk a bit more about Kelly LeBrock because obviously she is the elephant in the room in many respects, and there are some I know some people would take issue with it nowadays. The fact that Kelly LeBrock makes out with Wyatt in the film, and she was 24 at the time. I think he was actually 14, which is quite illegal nowadays. I think so, yeah. You might want to check that out, but I'm sure he was still pretty young.
I mean, I don't need to give you any excuse to keep talking, but you keep talking. And
no, I will keep talking. And obviously, that is probably about as lewd as the film gets, is her making out with this underage kid. And it's quite bizarre because it's the only bit of real sexuality beyond the kind of like childish thing of them both standing in the shower with their clothes on.
They were talking about that weird gymnastics routine as well, weren't they? That he fell asleep during.
Oh, yeah, there was that as well. But, I mean, they kissed on screen. I'm not having it for a second that, say he was 14, that he's been taken advantage of. Don't get me wrong, if it's the other way around, it's gross and it's inappropriate. If you're a 14-year-old boy and you've got the opportunity, even on screen, to make out with 24-year-old Kelly LeBrock, that is a story for the rest of your life. Like, if that makes you, if you grow up and you're like, oh, I was like, it was inappropriate, I was taken advantage of, you don't deserve to live, as far as I'm concerned. You know those pandas who refuse to fuck? Eventually, like, just die. Just fucking die. Like, if you making out with Kelly LeBrock when you're 14 is detrimental to the rest of your life, like, you just go fuck yourself. I'm just not having it. Even your old man would be like, dude, you're a fucking legend. Like, no one's going to find that inappropriate.
You're pretty much spot on. He was 15, he was 16 when it came out in 1985, so he would have been, 15 when he was filming it. But can you imagine walking in and they're going, okay, so this is the scene, this is the time now where you're going to kiss her. What? Yeah, peck on the cheek. No, tongues. And she's going
no, that's the thing, though.
Oh, no, there was no tongue.
There was a thing, supposedly, he got a bit carried away, put his tongue in her mouth, she slapped him and said, do that again, I'll beat the shit out of you. Oh, okay. I was like, and based on her character in this film, I totally buy that. And it's one of the reasons I think this film doesn't feel gross now, is the fact that, of course, there's always going to be some bits where if you want to find offense in it, you can. It's up to you, whatever. But the fact that she is clearly the strongest and most level-headed character in the film, and she is like in control of almost every situation, it seems, is the reason the movie works. And a big part of that is Kelly LeBrock as Lisa. She is so fucking good in this film. That sequence you mentioned, which is almost from a different film, the bit when they're talking about him masturbating in front of his dad. Should I talk to a comb in your hair? He's like, I was combing your hair. And then the way like he stands up, she's like, shut up, Alan. You're out of shape and I'd kick your ass. He's like, oh yeah, I totally believe Kelly LeBrock would kick his ass. But because of her performance and because of the way she kind of just holds the screen, it always feels like, I know she says to the guys, oh, you control me, you created me. But on screen, it always feels like she's in control. And I think that's the reason this film doesn't feel gross in any way. And obviously, a big part of this film's success was getting that right, that casting, because she wasn't actually cast initially. It was, what was her name? I'm going to have to find it now. I do apologize. I've gone blank now. I can't find it in my notes.
Well, while you're looking, I will say.
Oh, no, I've got it. Sorry, very quickly.
So I'm not allowed to talk while you're looking. Okay.
No, I found it. No, they initially cast Kelly LeBrock, who was a model, and she was also married to Rod Stewart. And they actually filmed for 3 weeks in a kind of like Back to the Future like situation, but decided after 3 weeks, it's like, this isn't working. And they'd gone to Kelly LeBrock originally, and she had turned it down because she was like, I'm just not interested. But they went back up to 3 weeks, like, no, we really have to get you in this film. And eventually she agreed, and the film was all the better for it. Sorry, I do apologize.
I'm just pointing you up. No, I totally agree. Like she does feel she is carrying the film. She is the one. Well, she's the one that makes all the decisions. Whether or not they think they're making the decisions, she's making the decisions. Mm-hmm. She's the one who's doing everything to make their lives better. Really, she knows exactly what they want. It's not the fact that they want an older woman. They want girlfriends. They want love. They want to be. So in her way, she's the one who's making. In her way, that's how she's making it happen. They need a party. They need to be out of their shell. They need people to notice them, not just while they're stood leering at teenage girls in the locker room. Like that's what they need, and that's what she gives them. And she carries it so well. And we say it quite a few times. I would never be able to picture anyone else playing that role.
No, absolutely not. But and as I said, she does become absolutely iconic. Like in just that immediate, like in terms of like an initial impact, like when they've like you get all the computer magic, whatever it is, the door explodes, and she's just standing there looking like that. You're just like, well, that's it. That's the poster right there. It's super, super iconic. It's up there with was it 10,000 Years BC? Is that the film where she's got like the bra? The furry bra on the poster. Jesus Christ.
I have no idea what you're about.
It's from the 60s, 64. It doesn't matter. I'll get to it in a minute. But, it was just that immediate iconic look of like sexiness in the 80s. Like, let's be clear, like she's got like the big perm haircut, like, and she changes her outfit and the hair numerous times throughout the film. But every time it feels like it's more and more 80s. But it doesn't matter because she's so goddamn striking that you just totally buy into it. Like, oh yeah, she's just every 15-year-old's dream girl. And that is the important thing again. It's like, from a visual perspective, she is every 15-year-old's dream girl. And she shows up and you think, well, that's what you want. But like you said, throughout the film, she's basically pointing them towards what they need to become and what they really want. And it's not this girl who is miles out of their league and, they would have no chance spending time with. They want real relationships and they want to become better people. So the narrative does come back around eventually with the whole John Hughes element of the script. But yeah, she's great in this film.
Watching this film, and don't get me wrong, Kelly LeBrock, as you said, every 15-year-old's dream girl. She's pretty tasty. I always preferred
pretty tasty.
I always preferred Hilly, the girl that Wyatt ended up with.
The blonde girl?
No, the brunette.
Oh, see, she'd be third on the list for me. I preferred the blonde girl that Gary ended up with. Sorry. Yeah, I thought she was quite nice.
There you go.
There we go.
We're not arguing.
Although, to be honest, I would definitely prefer Kelly LeBrock. But again, I'd be the same. Whether it be 15 or now, she's entirely too hot. She's just so outrageously hot. You'd be like, I'd feel ludicrous standing next to her.
I love how you went for the blonde, and I would have gone for the brunette. When your wife's brunette and my wife currently is blonde.
I don't know, what can you do? There's something going on there for sure. But a few just like random things I noticed in this film, right? One, there's a Ferris Bueller style fourth wall break from Wyatt, which only happens once in the film, and it's really bizarre. I'm not sure what's happening there. We're supposed to accept, like, again, Wyatt's house, this seems to be a John Hughes thing, is absolutely fucking huge.
Is a castle from the outside?
Yeah, and like, is this another Home Alone situation? Like, is his dad also a drug dealer? Maybe I was thinking, like, he could be working with Peter McAllister. This is 5 years earlier. They're building up the empire. Sorry, this is a callback to our Home Alone podcast where we decided that Peter McAllister is probably a drug dealer because there's no other explanation for their giant house either. But the strangest one is, towards the end of the film, is there a clear nod to Dragnet?
Yeah.
The bit when they're talking to each other and like it zooms in on their mouths and the way they're delivering the lines, that's pure Dragnet. But I was like, when did Dragnet the movie come out? Or is it like a nod to the TV show? It's just, again, a really bizarre thing which is thrown in kind of alongside the fourth wall break-in where like this doesn't feel like it belongs in this film, but it's fucking going in there anyway. There's just a few strange choices made in this film, to say the least.
I thought you were going to say the strange choice, the strange thing that you noticed was... Again, the brunette that Wyatt ends up with, Judy Aronson, who played Hilly, was in American Ninja with Michael Dudikoff.
Jeez Louise.
From the same year.
That isn't on.
I do love an American Ninja, I must admit.
Oh, I have not seen that film for so long, and to be honest, that is probably absolutely fine.
Nope, you'll be watching it at some point.
Oh, see, I've typed in furry bra poster and all kind. The Raquel Welch one, I know Raquel Welch. I'm just trying. Yeah. Well, Raquel Welch, like she was like the kind of like the poster girl for like sexy, like sex symbol of 60s cinema, and I just think like basically Kelly LeBrock became the 80s equivalent in just one moment as soon as she showed up on screen.
In this film, Wyatt basically lives in a castle, right?
Yes, a ridiculous castle.
What does the dad do for a living?
Well, that's what I was talking about there. I was like, he must be a drug dealer. That's the only answer.
Sorry, you were speaking so fast and so long. I totally lost my train of thought with you.
Oh, no, that's what I was saying about the Home Alone thing. Yeah. That, like, he must be a drug dealer because there's no other explanation as to why they... But it pops up in all of his films, just these white families supposedly living in suburbia, just whatever kids.
And you
just
got the other
to
one,
live in castles.
Like Gary's dad is a plumber.
Yeah.
Will he remember Gary again? Or is it just forever?
No, he's fucked now. Yeah. He's fucked. Yeah, and I think the grandparents are frozen in time forever as well. I think
that was, oh my God, who speaks like that?
I know, it's very strange. Although I find it amazing that we've gone this far into the podcast and we've not mentioned the fact that Vernon Wells shows up as his character from Mad Max 2. Like,
what do you mean? I said it at the beginning.
Yeah, but the fact that we haven't spent any time, like, how bizarre is that? Like he was it, you mentioned Michael Berryman as the mutant biker.
Yeah.
That whole sequence is absolutely insane.
Yeah,
like in a film, and I know that part of the film really does go insane because again, it has like the second bat of the Poltergeist. Only it's pulling that girl's clothes off. Why she's sitting at the piano, nobody's really sure. But yeah,
they had to get the obligatory boob shot, though, didn't they? But
they did. The classic '80s boob shot. You've got to get a horizontal
as she shoved up through a chimney. Like, how big is that chimney for a start? She's able to
he lives in a fucking castle. What can you do?
You notice as well, Vernon Wells, when he after he does his scream with the shotgun,
which is a direct nod to Mad Max 2 again, isn't it? Yeah.
And they leave through. Well, the other direct nod is his vehicle. Did you see his vehicle?
You can see it in the background, can't you?
And it's got two bodies in where I can think is cling film,
just hanging off the ends,
hanging off the edge. Like, it's absolutely insane.
Well, like I said, it's just like these weird nods to very specific films. As I said, I don't think Dragnet the movie was out, so I think it was a nod to like the 1950s TV show, again strange, but then to a film which is, I think Mad Max 2 was like 1982, I want to say, so it's only been out for a couple of years, and to have something so, because the other guys, they're not, obviously Michael Berryman is famous for being in a whole host of horror films, but I don't think he's playing a character, and then was the other dude with the metal face, he's not from anything. But for some odd reason, when it comes to Vernon Wells' character, who is down as Lord General in the credits, he is directly ripped from Mad Max 2. So again, it's just a bit of an odd choice. But
it's insane as well, isn't it? Because him and Bill Paxton then went on to the same year to do Commando.
Of course.
Like, you see Vernon Wells in this, and okay, he's not built, but he does look imposing. He's a big man. He's imposing. Mm-hmm. The same year, you see him in Weird Science again. You see him in Commando, and he's that weird chubby dude with
but the thing is, if you put him in the right stuff, say if he had the mohawk or he had a beard or something, he could probably carry that timber because he always had that timber. He was never cut or ripped or anything. But instead, they put him in that chainmail vest and gave him a Freddie Mercury mustache. It's like, yeah, you're going to make him just look And the other thing is, of course, is he's standing next to Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's another big issue. I mentioned, I think when we did the They Live podcast, it's like when you see wrestlers on screen, they're nearly always standing next to other wrestlers. So I grew up like thinking Roddy Piper was just like this average sized dude. When you see him standing next to normal guys and he takes his top off, you're like, that guy's an absolute fucking monster. It's just because 90% of the time when you see him, he was standing next to the Ultimate Warrior or Hulk Hogan, who are like 6'4" and absolutely shredded as well. And I think it's the same thing with this. I think, standing next to most people, Vernon Wells is this big, imposing dude. But next to Mr. Olympia, Arnold Schwarzenegger, in his 1985 shape, when he was so shredded, he just looks like a bit of a fat mess, which is unfair, but what can you do?
Did you see as well Michael Berryman, who played Mutant Biker? Mm-hmm. Did you see when it was this stunt man?
Oh yeah, super obvious
that they just put a bald cap on a guy and just said, you'll be fine, just go.
I think Michael Berryman, I thought maybe he'd just do his own stunts because he's like, well, what's the worst that can happen? Jesus Christ, he's not an attractive dude. But cool. One final nod to the fact that they introduced both the Porsche and the Ferrari at the end of the film. Like, this film, low-key, has two of the coolest cars ever seen on screen. Like, for me, in terms of aesthetics, that Porsche and Ferrari combo are absolutely out of this world. And their totally blasé approach to drunk driving is synonymous with the 80s, where it's frowned upon rather than being genuinely illegal. It's like, he's drunk, he's having a bit of fun, it'll be fine.
Not a huge fan of the cars, but also they're both 15, or no, I think Gary actually might be 16 at this point. Mm-hmm. And he's because it was just that little hint that Wyatt doesn't have his learner's permit, but I think Gary might. But he's able to outmaneuver the cops and go past like a speeding train. And this is what got me right. Gary managed to go in front of the train. Mm-hmm. And just as soon as he went through the train had disappeared because they didn't see the copper do his, damn it, chuck his out on the floor. If the copper would have just stayed in the car and waited
he could have caught him up. Yeah.
That train was
dude, you gave up really quickly. And also, if you're chasing down a car, you don't just give up then. You call another cop and say, listen, there's a Ferrari I'm chasing, a fucking Ferrari. It won't be hard to find,
Usually when you do that whole train thing, there's about 100 cars on And unless
Yeah,
it's the
yeah,
Fast and the Furious, you're not going to jump through the one random flat car. Do you know what I mean?
Not.
So, but no, there was two cars on that train. There was the engine, and then there was the car behind it. He could have just carried on. But also, the fact that they escaped helps as well, because they'll be looking around town for this Ferrari that disappeared into nothing.
Well, yeah, a few things. And that's the thing with this film. And they do kind of lean into it a few times, or fall back on it, should we say, is that every so often, like, it's just Lisa's computer magic. She's just got computer magic, so it's absolutely fine. And like right down to the end, where none of it's digitized or anything. The moment when obviously, you know, Wyatt and Gary have learned their lessons, and like Mary Poppins, they no longer need her help and she can just disappear. She disappears like Juno in fucking Beetlejuice into like a cloud of smoke. There's no like digitized, there's no like hint of computerization. She just disappears into the smoke like Juno, or I guess more people get the reference. What's it called? Mary Poppins. All very strange, but you know, it's the 80s. What can you do?
Mentioned it last week in Titanic as well, and it's something that's happened in here as well. And it's the whole, I know, like, she was 17 in Titanic and they're 15. Fuck me, they fall in love quick, don't they? Like, he drops the brunette off. Wyatt drops the brunette off, and he's screaming, "I love you." She should be thinking, "Fuck me, I'm going to lock my door and wait." Like,
yeah, they're 15. I'll give them the benefit. I know what you mean, but like, you know, hormones are running wild. Girls are taking interest. You're going through a big, you know, emotional kind of, you know, series of events. He falls in love that quickly. It's ridiculous, sure. But you got to remember, there's who is it? It's like they even mentions it in another John Hughes film with Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where he's talking about his best friend. He says, "Listen, the first girl that sleeps with him, he's going to fall in love with, and he's going to marry her." Like, they're geeks as well. You got to remember, they've never had any interest in girls. Suddenly, these girls are interested in them. Of course, they fall in love at the top of a hat.
I appreciate it, but it always happens way too quick. Like that.
This is always that classic Rob thing, where like they fall in love too quick, and that train didn't make sense.
Yes, honestly, it doesn't make none of it makes
all sense. The batty shit that happens in this film.
Makes me laugh. Right?
Rocket comes up through the house. You're like, I don't know, that train. I'm not buying it. I'm not fucking buying it.
Oh, the fact the room was blue. Like, has this kitchen always been blue? But it's the love thing. It's funny. That made me think randomly of my kid at the moment, because he's into "Daddy, I love you," "Mummy, I love you," "You're my best friends." Mm-hmm. But also, as quick as he is to give you love, he's quick enough to take it away. "Mummy, I love you. I don't love Daddy." Like, ooh, dagger to the heart.
That is harsh. Jesus Christ. This is why I don't have kids. Although saying that, I've got cats and they are dismissive as fuck. So
if they could speak and tell you they loved you. But why was that room blue? And more importantly, not why was that room blue, why was it snowing in Chet's room?
Well, I think they were just suggesting everything's going wrong. Like, again, it was only that last kind of sequence when they really started swinging for the fences and suggesting, well, we can do anything at this point because the computer has gone wrong for whatever reason. So they kind of half explained the rocket. Fair enough. It's nonsense, but I'll buy it. But as to why his room was snowing, why the kitchen was blue, I have no idea. I just think they just thought, well, it'll be fun. It'll look cool. It's the finale of the film. Let's just fucking go for it. All right, fair enough. Does it make sense? No. Does most things in this film make sense? Not really. So we'll just let it go. The cool thing is every time you're like, that's dopey, at least what it does is look cool. Like, and that's what this film kind of falls back on is its iconography more often than not. If you stop and think about it for more than 2 seconds, the film isn't actually all that great and makes no sense, but it looks cool and it's fun.
Yeah, I mean, I can't take that away from you. It is a fun ride. I still think it's a little bit problematic in places, especially now, but it's still cool to watch.
I think, well, like I said, like my issue with this film is that I watched it around 2000. And it was the same time I watched Breakfast Club for the first time. And it was too late. And it was too close to the 80s at the time for it to be kind of like niche or anything. So I was watching it just as I would watch any film. And it seemed like out of date. And if anything, it actually seemed a little bit lame. But because there's so much time has passed now and it's become so kitsch with the whole 80s thing, it's like it's come back around and it's fun again because it's ludicrous. I'm not expecting it to kind of stand up to modern day standards because it's this ludicrous film from the 80s with very 80s sensibilities. So I do enjoy it now. And for the same reason, I don't find it problematic because it's a film from nearly 40 years ago. And I think its heart's in the right place. It doesn't always get it correct, but I'm like, if anybody's getting offended by 1985's Weird Science, like I say with a lot of things, you just need to toughen up a little bit and get over yourself. This film is 37 fucking years old. It's it's going to have some issues, but it is what it is.
Stop making me realize I'm now 40.
Yeah, I don't like it either. In terms of favorite scenes, I'll go first. The obvious one is the first appearance of Kelly LeBrock, which I think is the iconic scene in the film. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But the one you also mentioned, the scene with Gary's parents, where I think the dialogue and everything is absolutely fantastic. I think Gary's fantastic. I think Lisa, I don't know why I'm using their character names rather than their real names, but I love that scene. So the most iconic is the first appearance of Kelly LeBrock, but my favorite scene is probably the one you quoted at the start.
And that is my favorite scene. That's why I took the quote from it, because
so good.
It becomes a different film all of a sudden.
It does. Yeah, I had the same notes.
Yeah, like pulling a gun on him, like, I'll kick your ass kind of thing. And then he's yelling at his mother, man, I never tossed off. Like,
well, that's the thing. Oh, sorry.
The fact that we've never called it tossing off.
Well, it is a very British term, though, isn't it? Tossing off. It feels quite old-fashioned. I mean, I haven't used it for a long time, but it was definitely a term I was aware of, tossing off.
Oh, no, I know what tossing off is. Obviously.
Yeah, it's just strange that they knew what tossing off was.
I've never used. I mean, randomly, we would have used jerk off more in this country, which is an American thing. Than tossing off.
I feel like it was used maybe a bit more. A tosser, tossing off. I think it was used a bit more prevalently when I was younger, but yeah, that whole sequence is weird, and that whole idea of, like, somebody telling on you that in front of your mum when you're 15 that you're in the bathroom jerking off. It's like, you've just got to leave home. Yeah, it's like, I'm not going to tell the story about a dude I know. No, I am.
A dude named Liam?
No, definitely not Liam. He's a fucking savage. Supposedly, and I always put supposedly because you're hearing this, secondhand knowledge and stuff like that. Supposedly, he came back from a night out, super smashed, decided, butt naked on his bed, to pleasure himself by jerking off, should we say. He's like a savage, come on his own stomach, but then passed out. He's woken up in the morning, butt naked, his own cum on his stomach, and with a cup of tea on the bedside table. Yeah. Needless to say, he lives with his mum. I'm like, dude, I would leave the fucking country. That'd be it. I wouldn't even go downstairs. I would jump out of the window and just fucking leave the country. That would be it. I could never look at my mum again. Like, that is one of the most horrifying stories I've ever heard.
It's that urban legend that you'd hear, in it, about jerking off and tossing off, whatever you want to say. I really don't know what's right to say anymore.
I don't know.
With headphones on and your eyes closed, and you wake up and there's a cup of tea next. Not wake up. You finish and there's a cup of tea next to your bedside table.
That's so horrifying. That's horrifying. Well, anyway, let's move on to loves and hates. So, love number one with the bullet, Kelly LeBrock. It's not just the fact that she looks fantastic in this film. She is legitimately the best. Like, she's the best part of this film, I think, as in terms of performance. It is a great premise. It's ludicrous, of course. It's it's a movie made for 15-year-old boys. But as somebody who was once a 15-year-old boy, you can totally get on board with the premise, that's for sure. I love the whole 80s computer magic. It's absolutely ludicrous, but I loved it. The fact that at the time you could get away with anything on screen because nobody knew shit about computers. And I'm going to stick in number 4, the Ferrari and the Porsche, just because you said you didn't like him, which is outrageous.
Why do we do 3 when you can't fucking stick?
I can't count. You know what I'm like.
Kelly LeBrock, straight away. Yeah. I mean, she's great in it. She carries the film. She's got the sexuality that you would expect a 15-year-old to want. She is absolutely fantastic. She's so good in it.
And this is not thing to say, but she has a very British mouth. Yeah. I think it's just the way she delivers her lines.
Your fucking mouth obsession.
You agreed with me first before you had to go. She has a very British mouth, I want to tell you.
I do agree with you, but you still brought up this mouth obsession.
Far too many times. I probably have, yeah. But anyway, Kelly LeBrock, very British mouth. Yeah. Please, do continue.
Number 2, Kelly LeBrock's mouth.
Yes.
The girls, they were low-key. I really liked them. To be fair,
me too.
The stuff they would, like, typical teenage girls, they're with these guys, not because they like them, because they get them into the great parties. They've had more of a social life. They did what you would expect the teenage girls of that era to be. So I think they were really, and we're just calling them the girls. And I think it's...
Yeah, I know it's a bit harsh.
So it was Susan Snyder. Susan Snyder and Judy Aronson, who played Deb and Hilly, and I think they were really good together. They were.
They are. I like that was my issue. One of my major issues with the film is that they needed more screen time. I would have preferred there to be more of a build up towards them getting together with. I think
they needed more of like a backstory, more fleshing out. But they definitely.
Yeah.
For the screen
they're still good.
Yeah, because they're. I didn't want to say. What's the word? I always forget these words. What's the word when they feel
superfluous?
No. So Kelly LeBrock is, she's so sexy, she's so this, but they don't feel that way. What? I can't think of the word.
I don't know. It doesn't matter.
But they do. It's not eccentricity. Why do I keep going back to eccentricities? Fuck! I can't even think of the word. But they do the word I can't think of so well.
No wonder you wanted that word so much. The rest of the sentence doesn't work without it. So that makes zero sense. But it was fun to watch.
It's not jealousy either. It's things they feel about themselves.
Insecurity.
Yes.
There we go. Got there eventually.
The insecurity.
No, and that's the thing. I agree with you. Like they play up to that a bit at the end. There's the scene with I can't remember the name of the blonde girl specifically, but Deb and Gary are together, and just like her insecurities about how beautiful Lisa is, and there's no sense of kind of meanness. They just kind of accept the fact that she is a supermodel, and both the girls are really pretty, but only 1 in a million look like Kelly LeBrock. There's pretty in that kind of girl next door or believably pretty, whereas if 1985 Kelly LeBrock walks down the street, the whole street just stops. Yeah. Because it's just like, she is so strikingly beautiful. It's a different level of beautiful. And I'm not saying I prefer it or anything like that. It's just a different level. That kind of rarefied runway beauty where it's so, above all else, it's striking. It's almost like it doesn't feel like it belongs in the real world. And you can see why they would have insecurities about that. And I would like to have seen that kind of like character development a bit more and a bit more of their relationship together. But, it's a small price to pay for a film which is obviously leaning into the ludicrousness of the concept.
Yeah. 15 minutes later, shall I do my third?
Yeah, sure. Go for it. This one's not my fault, just because you can't remember words. This is a podcast. Spoken podcast, sir.
Fuck off. I remember that word. I gotta go. I've already mentioned Kelly LeBrock, but Lisa as a character. No, this is why I'm adding her as the third, because everything she did to make the boys popular, everything she did, like from a motherly or sisterly angle, even though you think, Lisa, why are you freezing my parents? Why have you turned it blue? Why you bring mutants into it? Like, I think the Lisa character, not so much like number one, Kelly LeBrock looked great. She was fantastic. Yeah. But the Lisa character, the development of Lisa, that she just wanted these boys. That's my boys. She wanted these boys to succeed. I think is so well. And
I think it's essential for the film to work and again not feel gross. And they move, as I said, they move away from it so quickly, and they do it quite subtly. Like they have their little moment with the kiss and the shower scene and stuff. But they quickly, I think, realize, like, listen, we can't lean into this whole film. It'd just be unpleasant. And I know she does actively state, or I think Gary actually states, she feels more like a sister. But it becomes much more of that relationship very quickly. Like, it moves away from that sexual thing to her clearly trying to point them in the right direction and make them better people kind of thing. So, yeah, and I think, to your point, that is exactly why the film works in many respects.
Yeah, because you had I'll go straight into my hates here, because you had the grossness of, like, when they're shopping for, I was going to say deodorant, when they're shopping for a scent for Lisa, and they're going, are you shopping for your mum? No, we're shopping, well, you guys got girlfriends, and everything, and then they end up with sex pot, and it's just like the sexualization of, and I know that was the whole point of it with Lisa, but as you said, it just seemed to just be ick in points. Like,
well, it was always going to have an element. You can't make a film with that premise and not have at least a little bit of ickiness.
No, I get that.
Yeah. But no, I agree. Though.
Doesn't mean that you like for some reason as well. When you see Wyatt kissing Kelly, okay, 14-year-old, 24, whatever it is, it's kind of a sweet moment. It's meant to be that. When you see Anthony Michael Hall do it in the car with us, it's gross. It is.
Yeah, because then he's trying to show up, like, he's not trying to be a good person. It's not them, but they're kind of vulnerable. You know, they're not being vulnerable in their moments, and kind of, you're not seeing the people they really are. It's him trying to show up in front of Robert Downey Jr., isn't it? So, of course, he's going to be a slimeball in those sequences. But, in those moments, you're like, I'm not sure if I agree with this at all. But, yeah, it is.
My second hate, and I have purposefully not brought it up until now.
Mm-hmm.
Gary.
You just hate Gary.
I hate the way Gary is with Wyatt. Everything he destroys Wyatt's bathroom before he even knows Chet's coming. Tells Wyatt, "I hate your brother." He treats Wyatt like a piece of shit, and you can feel it throughout the entire film. Like, Gary is Wyatt's the follower to Gary, and Gary, they're all about being bullied, but Gary low key is doing some of the bullying to Wyatt. I'm not a fan of Gary in this film.
I think he's just a bit of a low-key dick. I think he does actually care for Wyatt, and I think they are genuinely friends. But you've seen the problem. I'm not sure if the problem's Gary so much as Wyatt being such a pussy. Like, that is the problem. Yeah. He's such a soft touch. Like, he almost needs a friend who's a bit of an asshole for him to have any chance of coming out of his shell. Because his automatic response to everything is, I'm not going to do it. I'm scared. So I think you do need... You can't have two Wyatts in this film. It'd be fucking unbearable.
Oh, no, I totally get it. But
no, it doesn't take away from the fact that you are right. Gary is still a bit of a dick.
But that's the problem. See, my third hate, Wyatt. That he's such a whiny bitch. He is like, he just will not stand up for himself. He will not do anything. Like, the reason why I don't like Gary is the opposite reason of why I don't like Wyatt. Because Wyatt will act more like Gary, but Gary is too much of Gary.
It's a tough break. And as you say, you might have been able to forgive Wyatt's, lack of spine if he had that moment at the end where he stood up to Shet, but he doesn't. Which is like I said, I think narratively, it's not a narrative choice. I think they just wanted to get the shit monster into the film.
It's such a missed opportunity.
It is a missed opportunity from a narrative perspective, and it feels like the kind of thing where, considering he is the writer-director of this film, you think John Hughes would be all over, but apparently not. Never mind.
And I'm going to sneak in a fourth. Robert Downey Jr. and Robert Russler, they were just pointless. There was no reason for them. They just idiots. They weren't bullies in the bullying sense. I don't know. There was no point in those two guys except to introduce the girls. And I'm adding a fifth one in just because I can. The Ferrari and the Porsche.
Oh, that's an outrageous choice. Outrageous choice. Hate number one. Gary does the black voice for 5 minutes too long. I mentioned it earlier. I don't mind the fact that he does the black voice. I actually think it's quite good. It's just the fact that it goes on for 5 minutes. And it was quite toe-curlingly awkward by, when they're like back at the house and he's still doing it. I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ, please stop this for the love of God. Gary's old-ass parents, they're probably much younger than I want to believe. I don't like going back to these 80s films where people in their 40s often look like they were 60. So you're like, oh, Jesus, like, look at his old parents. And then you realize they're about the same age as me. Don't care for that at all. Wyatt's voice all the time. Wyatt's voice is just unfucking bearable. Yeah. And I am going to stick in at number 4, the goofier elements of the comedy. I don't think it really works in this film. So there are a couple of moments with some physical comedy, some like weird audio comedy. There's some weird audio cues, which I also like. There's a bit where Gary kind of shakes his head, and it's that kind of almost cartoon comedy where that kind of sound going on. I don't care for any of that. It's not my kind of comedy, and I don't think it has any place in this film.
I'll lay you off. Gary's dad was only 47. I googled it to hope that he was like
36 or something.
But
well, at least he was old. That makes me feel slightly better. Surely this time, after forgetting alternative names for a bunch of movies where there were clearly no alternative names, surely Weird Science is going to deliver the goods this week.
And boy, did they deliver.
Oh, awesome. Finally, it had to happen eventually. We couldn't have another Dick. Every week can't be Dick Tracy and fucking Titanic, dude.
No. But I can appreciate where they get some of these titles. But there's a few that it just makes no sense. Right. So we'll start off with Argentina. The Explosive Girl. The Explosive Girl. Crazy Science.
Yeah, that's mental. I'll give you that.
Brazil. Woman Note 1000.
It's going to be some kind of weird Brazilian computer reference. Okay, yeah.
Bulgaria. Unclean Science.
I don't like that one either. That's the worst.
French Canada. Yes, I said Canadian. A dream creature.
That's a different film. That's totally a different film.
Yep. Croatia, strange science. Yeah, I get that.
Fine.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Finland, Lisa, a dream woman.
It's a little bit on the nose, but they're Finnish. What can you do? This is just how they roll.
Germany. So they did Lisa, but for some reason they've done it as an acronym. L.I.S.A. Right, so I don't know
fine. Then let's not forget, though, there was a film called Simone, which was spelled Sim1 with Al Pacino in the early 2000s. So, this is the world we live in.
So that was Lisa, the Bright Madness.
What the fuck?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Hungary, Strange Attempt.
Strange Attempt?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's got to be a translation issue, but sure.
Oh, you want a translation issue? Japan. Tokimeki Science.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so Japanese.
It's Tokimeki.
Fuck knows. Just Japanese sounds. That's what it sounds like.
Yep. Mexico, Crazy Science. Poland, just as literal as they can get. A girl from the computer.
Yeah, no, fair play.
Portugal, Woman Madness.
Again, feels like a different film, but sure.
Yeah. Romania, The Ideal Woman.
Fuck, did every country have a different title? This is insane.
Yeah, this is insane. I get the last three now. Russia. Oh, This Science.
Yeah.
Right? Like, literally, the title is, oh, This Science. Okay.
Jesus.
West Germany. So, we already had Germany. We got the West Germany TV title.
Mm-hmm.
Cooler Magic with Lisa.
Okay, yeah. That feels like a TV show rather than a movie, but okay.
Taiwan, this has to be a translation issue. I've saved this for last. This has to be a translation issue. Modern.
Just modern.
Just modern.
Just modern. Bloody, what do they think? The strangest thing about this, and I'll go straight into facts on this, is the fact that the movie takes its name from a comic book by EC Comics. I'm not sure if you're aware of EC Comics. They're famous for doing the horror, like Tales from the Crypt. They've got a very distinct visual style. And it was the same with their sci-fi stuff. So this movie takes its name very specifically from the Weird Science EC Comics. So the fact that it came from a comic would suggest that maybe there'd be quite a bit of consistency between the names. But as you just proved, that was not the fucking case. So obviously they didn't give two shits about EC Comics or the whole Weird Science brand because they just went absolutely bonkers with those names, which is absolutely fantastic. I've got one other fact. Anthony Michael Hall turned down National Lampoon's European Vacation to make Weird Science, which isn't a big deal. However, because he turned it down, they obviously had to recast one of the siblings. So was it because of Anthony Michael Hall that they had to recast both of them? Because obviously, I assume if they were bringing back Anthony Michael Hall, that they would bring back the original sister for the sequel. But because they weren't bringing him back, that means they fucked over the actress as well.
I don't think. Maybe she just chose not to come back. I'm not too sure. Maybe there was another line for her. Because the sister that we watched in Christmas Vacation was Juliette Lewis, wasn't it?
Yeah. I don't know. I just think. Well, I think if they bring him back Anthony Michael Hall initially as the brother, I think you bring back the initial sister.
Yeah, but I mean,
if he decides he's not coming back, I think they probably go, well, we're going to cast them younger again because they're obviously quite, a bit older by that point. So I think he's probably screwed over the actress, to be honest.
Anthony Michael Hall is a bigger name. So they're bringing him back. Maybe they would just like, oh, you know what, we can get somebody.
Maybe.
I say somebody cheaper to play, but was Juliette Lewis a name back then?
Oh, yeah. I think so. Not like massive, but she was a name for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, sorry. Those are my two facts. Anyway,
we'll go with you thinking the studio have screwed them over, and for some reason, I'm on their side for once.
Fair enough. It would have been Dana Barron was Audrey Griswold in the first film, so she was the one who was potentially screwed over in the sequel because of Anthony Michael Hall's choice. But hey ho, we'll never know. Just hearsay.
Right, according to Bill Paxton, Chet's line, how about a nice greasy pork sandwich served in a dirty ashtray, was based on something his father, John Paxton, used to say to him when Bill was hungover from a night of drinking. Do you know, that's never made me feel sick.
It hasn't, because I'm already kind of thinking about the sandwich. I'm like, well, I can get over the ashtray thing, but it actually sounds quite delicious. The gross thing about that is he has very intense teeth when they do the close-up on his face. I find that more disconcerting than the thought of the sandwich.
How old is Chet meant to be?
Dude, I've got to know.
Come from college, right? Like he's on from college for the weekend. He's chewing on cigars like he's my father. He goes pheasant hunting or duck hunting, wherever the fuck.
Yeah.
Like,
what the fuck is up with that?
He's acting like he fought in Vietnam.
Yeah, yeah.
How fucking?
And well, there's the other thing is that Bill Paxton at the time looks like he was 30 because he was fucking 30. Yeah. He was actually 30 when he did this, and he looks every single year of that age for sure.
I have no idea how old he's. Like it's the
I don't know what they're going for. His character is really, really strange.
Yeah. So in the scene where Bill Paxton is speaking to Kelly LeBrock and he's interrogating everyone over the night before, you can see Susan Snyder and Anthony Michael Hall pissing themselves laughing. Did you see that when you were watching it?
Nope.
No. So there's like I was going to say snuggling into each other and hiding laughter and stifling laughter and things like that. It's actually, they struggled to stay in character because of the way Bill Paxton was. So they were just pissing themselves laughing. John Hughes chose to use the take in the film, which I thought,
going for it.
But I thought worked really well because for Gary, you had the moment where at the beginning of the film where he's scared. Well, not scared, but he understands Chet and kick the shit out of him. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But by the end of it, he's laughing in Chet's face, which is what Wyatt should have done.
Yeah. It's a shame. Again, it keeps coming back. It was such a weird choice for Wyatt not to grow a backbone there, but
yeah. So Vernon Wells said that this was his first time visiting America to do this film. It was, and
that's
then
insane.
As soon as they wrapped,
well, I guess he obviously was, filming. Mad Max would have been Australia.
Yeah, and that was it. And most of them were Australian. He came up. The first time he ever visited America was to do this. Probably straight from Mad Max. He already had the outfit. It's I think it was 81 for Road Warrior, but
okay.
As soon as he filmed this, he signed on to do Commando. So it wasn't he was over here filming Commando. He signed straight from this to do Commando.
Yeah. And then what was the other? He was in another film we did a while back. Inner Space, where he had like the fake handgun. That was him, wasn't it? He was like the bad guy in Inner Space.
Yeah.
That was
anyway, you called him Vernon Wells. No, what did you call him? His name is Vernon Wells. You called him Jules Verne.
Jules Verne, yeah. I actually had that in my head when I was going to say his name. I actually had to scroll down to make sure I'd written it down because it was in my head. I called him Jules Verne in the past. So yeah,
Jules Verne. John Hughes wasn't happy during the filming of the movie because it interfered with another project he cared much more about. It resulted in his work in a punishing schedule for months, but he agreed to direct it because Universal gave him a deal where he could also direct a more valued project if he started this one first. Can you guess what the other film was?
Pretty in Pink or Ferris Bueller?
Breakfast Club.
Oh, Breakfast. Oh, yeah, it was the same year. Breakfast Club was 85, of course. Yeah. Makes sense.
Sherman High School, also the same name of the high school and the Breakfast Club. So if this is the same name and they share the same kind of universe, does that mean that Anthony Michael Hall is playing two geeks in the same high school? He's playing Gary.
Yeah. It's the same as the View Askew universe. It was, the Kevin Smith thing where you've got a bunch of people playing a whole bunch of characters. But it's just strange that they're very, very similar characters, that's all.
Anthony Michael Hall makes a reference to a girlfriend from Canada. His character, Brian from the Breakfast Club, also makes a reference to an imaginary girlfriend from Canada.
There was always one kid who used to do that. Oh, yeah, I made out with this girl. Like, when you I remember there was like a big thing when we were all like 12, 13 about whether you'd made out with a girl or not, or copped off, as we used to say. And there was always like one kid be like, oh, yeah, there was this girl I went on holiday with and we kissed then. It's like, you full of shit. Unbelievable.
Robert Russler said the scene when the rocket came through the floor was a complicated shot to set up. Right before cameras rolled, Anthony Michael Hall farted, breaking the cast members' concentration and ruining the take. Russler estimates the scene cost $100,000 to shoot because the take was blown. It had to be filmed in reverse with additional tweaks in post-production.
Yeah, supposedly that fart cost $100,000.
Yeah, that's an expensive fart.
That's an expensive fart, yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. Like, you could make an argument, is that the most expensive fart of all time? Probably.
Oh, this is one I didn't know. The Piano Girl, the obligatory boob shot.
Mm-hmm.
She performed her own stunts, but she was played by October 1982 Playboy centerfold Kim Malin. Or Malin.
Oh, fair enough. It just didn't make any sense like that she was at the piano. Like, for some reason, I have no issue with the fact that all the clothes were torn off, but I don't get why she's at the piano. It was very strange.
So she performed her own stunts. This included the use of a scaffold when hoisted up with a chimney as a makeshift vacuum, where her clothes were ripped off, and a crane when hoisted in the air, where the piano girl lands in a swimming pool half naked. In real life, her Playboy centerfold pictorial used a swimming pool in the background. Mm-hmm. So She was just doing her all. They just ragged this woman around. Bless her.
Well, she was obviously committed to the role. God bless her.
This is one you've already mentioned. Obviously, Anthony Michael Hall passed on starring in European Vacation to be in this film. As a result, neither Griswold nor his sister are played by the same characters. But Dana Barron reprised her role of Audrey in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation 2, Cousin Eddie's Island Adventure. The one you've never heard of?
There you go. It obviously worked out just fine for her because she was in Cousin Eddie's, whatever the fuck it was called. The film nobody watched. Even those like me who adore the actual film.
I mean, yeah, that film had its problems because it was shite.
Oh, dude, you're absolutely so wrong. So wrong.
Kelly LeBrock, you already said that she turned this film down a number of times. Do you know why?
Because she was too busy just living life, I suppose?
Yeah. She was vacationing in France at the time and was having too much fun riding horses on the beach.
Oh, who can blame her? That sounds awesome. But I love the fact they just kept coming back to it. It's like, we've tried to film it without you. It doesn't work. You have to show up for this film. All right. Eventually, I'll get off my horse on the beach and go do your movie.
Yeah, the boys were unfortunately not seeing anything as well while she was showering. During the shower scene, she was wearing bikini bottoms and her nipples were covered with black tape.
Yeah, supposedly she was never nude once in the entire movie, which is good to know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you hear horror stories with things like that. What's the film with Marlon Brando where he's the one in Paris? You know the one I'm about?
Not on the waterfront, is it?
No. There's Honeymoon in Paris, Midnight in Paris, something like that.
Okay.
Where he's apparently having sex with an underage girl on the screen, and he uses butter as lube.
God.
Yeah. I mean, I might get that. I might be confusing that whole thing, but
well, that's a weird thing if you've confused that. That's a hell of a sentence.
Yeah. I'll give you a random one. The first of two movies where Bill Paxton has a brother named Wyatt. The second is, of course,
Wyatt. Fair enough. Or Tombstone specifically.
Yep. No, that'll do.
That'll do. In terms of legacy, for most people, a lot of people my age, you'll remember the TV show, which I used to watch, and Vanessa Angel, who I thought was going to be like this huge star, because it's like there was this and Kingpin, which it wasn't a massive hit, but it felt like a big deal to people my age.
It was a Farrelly Brothers one.
Yeah, Farrelly Brothers film. She's great in that, but it just never seemed to quite take off for her. But the thing that surprised me is that the TV show ran for 5 seasons. Yeah, I thought it'd be like a one and done, but
82 episodes.
Yeah, 94 to 98. But I guess the other legacy is like the question of like, where does this sit in the list of John Hughes films?
You can't go past the TV show. You cannot go past the TV show without talking about the fact that in the TV show, she has a relationship with both Chet and Wyatt.
Does she?
Yeah.
I can hardly remember it. I remember watching some of it when I was younger, but I've not seen it since it came out, so well over 20 years.
It can't be, obviously, because it's a half-hour show and they need storylines. She ends up falling in love with Chet and Wyatt.
Of course she does. But like you said, if you've got 5 seasons and 84 episodes, it's going to happen eventually, I suppose.
Who I always confuse Vanessa Angel with?
Who's that?
Stacey Keebler.
I can see that.
From WWE.
Yeah. No, they got some looks for sure.
Who, as we speak, is in the 2023 Hall of Fame for WrestleMania.
Is she really? Oh,
yeah,
there we go. That is as an odd aside, but I can totally see where you're coming from there. Yeah, as I said, it'd be interesting to see where people place this in their list of like John Hughes's films. I don't think it's anywhere near the top, but bizarrely, I think it's one of his most iconic because of those moments. I don't think it's the best film, but I think it's one of his most iconic films. Yep. And it's one of those things where I think everyone knows the premise, even if they haven't seen the movie. And it's like I said earlier, like Kelly LeBrock, I think is more famous than the movie itself. Like even if you haven't seen the film, even if you didn't grow up in the 80s, I think most people are aware of the image of her in the door. I think it became that iconic. And as I mentioned earlier, there was like the ongoing talk of a remake, and the fact that it's such a great premise. Will it ever get a remake? I don't know. As I said, I think now's maybe bizarrely the perfect time for it, but I don't know. I'm just not sure if it's ever going to happen. But never say never when it comes to remakes, of course.
As of 2017, Michael Smith, you call him? Not Ilan Michael Smith, is that his name?
Oh, yeah. Michael.
Yeah. He mentioned as well the fact that there's a sequel in the works.
Mitchell Smith, not Michael Smith. Mitchell Smith. Sorry.
There's meant to be a sequel in the works with Channing Tatum.
But it would be an actual sequel, would it?
Yeah. In 2017, Ilan Mitchell Smith talked about a sequel to Weird Science starring Channing Tatum.
Well, I guess at the moment, like legacy sequels are all the rage, so maybe they could make it work. But I'm just not convinced that's going to happen. In terms of the score and soundtrack, I mean, the film's theme song, "Weird Science," which is an absolute belter, was performed by Oingo Boingo and written by the band.
Really? Is that how you're going to pronounce them?
How is it pronounced?
Oingo Boingo.
Oingo Boingo, of course. Sorry. What did I say? Oingo Boingo.
Oingo Boingo.
Oh, now that you say it, Oingo Boingo, that makes sense.
I can't fucking breathe.
No, it's one of those things, like, as soon as you said it now, I'm like, oh yeah, of course it's Oingo Boingo, not Oingo Boingo.
You took that so literal.
I really did, didn't I? I really did. Oh, that's how it's spelled. I'm not going to try and defend it. It was a terrible choice.
Oh my God.
It was written by the band's frontman, Danny Elfman, of all people, which I'm surprised to hear. But the song, the soundtrack's got a whole bunch of like cool songs by like awesomely named 80s groups, like The Killing Joke, Kim Wilde, and the wonderfully named Wall of Voodoo. Fuck, Oingo Boingo.
Have you seen Danny Elfman?
Yeah, he's an odd-looking cat man.
He is a beast, isn't he? Like he's like, you see Danny Elfman, he's got like ginger curtains, you know. And as soon as that dude takes his top off, not only is he ripped, he is covered in tattoos. Yeah,
it's just a strange, very, very talented human being.
Yeah.
But visually, I don't know, like certain people, like you put them into certain brackets. Like, I don't know, I guess back in the day it would be geeks and it'd be jocks and all this stuff. Like, there's no group for him to go in. He's so fucking weird. Not in a negative way. He's just bizarre to look at. Yeah. Not in the same way that Kelly LeBrock would walk and get everyone's attention. He would get everyone's attention, but in a very different way, because you've probably never seen another human being that looks like him. But as I said, also very talented.
Married to Bridget Fonda.
Amazing. Unbelievable. It's done very well there.
Yeah.
In terms of video games, there is no video game, but I guess it kind of creates itself almost in terms of a video game about making the perfect girl. Or would you have a video game about how to deal with having built the perfect girl? Having to deal with all the pitfalls found, having to live with this creation you've made. I was almost thinking like a Sims DLC, where you create the perfect girl and then you see how your life is impacted by that accordingly, I suppose. Okay. So I guess like the two extremes are a game about living with the perfect girl, or a game literally about creating the perfect girl. I don't know. Or you could just do a Gary chase scene at the end, like where he's in the Ferrari at the end. It just reminded me of Outrun, because he's got his blonde-haired girlfriend in the side. You could just do an Outrun DLC called Weird Science Outrun Edition, I suppose. So that'd be my other option. But so you're not going to pick that because you hate the fucking Ferrari.
For me, it would be more along the TV show. Now, I know you said you don't really remember the TV show. Mm-hmm. So the point of the TV show was Lisa was able to grant these wishes. Mm-hmm. But like the whole monkey paw deal and things like that, they always seem to go wrong. Yeah. And you can't undo the wish. They call them wishes in the TV show, so you can't.
They should have called it like Weird Science, the Faustian Pact, shouldn't they? Yeah.
So you can undo it. So you've got to just I sail through. So that would be more of a video game style. Like you could have it as like I suppose the way now they've done the new Hitman, where it's Hitman chapters. They've released chapters every now and then. You would have these different wishes. Maybe you could choose a wish, and then you've got to live through the level of how it's going.
Yeah, and maybe then Lisa just keeps popping up as different characters in each world, kind of thing, almost. Yeah. No, I think that's probably better. That beats my Outrun suggestion, and the Sims thing was a bit boring. So let's go with your, Faustian Pact of cursed wishes.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Fun. All right, we'll go with that. In terms of recommendations and scores, this was a bit of a weird one for me, because just be clear, I wouldn't recommend this one to anyone. Not that I dislike it in any particular way. I just think it's so 80s, it's so of its time. There are certain people I could recommend this to, but I feel like you would have to have an interest in 80s cinema. I couldn't just recommend this to any old person that I know. I just don't think it would work. And I think it's just too weird in many respects. So no, I wouldn't recommend it. And in terms of a score, I'd probably give it a 3. in many respects, I don't think it's a fantastic film, but it's an iconic film and it's a memorable one, which just about overcomes its many narrative faults by having a pretty decent cast, despite some very annoying voices. So yeah, it's a very flawed film in many respects. I don't think that's a new thing. I don't think it's one of those things where it's just because, and don't get me wrong here, as it has aged, this film feels very 1985, but I don't think this film was a great film in 1985. And I don't think it's a great film now, but it's still a fun film and it's still a very iconic film. And Kelly LeBrock absolutely makes it. So 3 stars, but I'm not recommending it.
It's one thing we always say when we talk about these films in the 80s, that the whole point of us doing this podcast was the fact that it was films we grew up with and we loved, and we watched once, we watched millions of times. It doesn't matter. It was films that we loved. It was films we want to go back to from our childhood. The problem that you have with going back to films from our childhood is the fact that generally they probably weren't all that good in the first place. And it's pretty much the same. I wouldn't recommend it. It's not a film that you can recommend, but it is a middle of the road as well. It is a 3. So, and the reason why I say it like that is because it's the fact that a lot of the films that we've gone back to, or a lot of the films we've gone back to and we say we've loved, if you look at it through the reviewer's eyes, it has its issues, it has its problems. So even though I loved it back then, it was fun to watch, it's not like it's a 4 or a 5. It's definitely just middle of the road. It's definitely a 3.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I mean, I've actually been pleasantly surprised by a lot of the films we've gone back and revisited on this podcast, where I enjoyed them growing up, and I've gone back and they've held up. And there are some films, as you said, these aren't necessarily all films that we've grown up and loved, or at least both of us. There are films where I've only seen maybe once or twice, or some I've never seen before. And I've gone back, and of course you watch it through a slightly different lens because it's, you're watching a film 30 years after it's initially released. But a lot of them I think still hold up. And as I said, this film, I'm just not convinced. I don't think the issue is the fact that I feel like it's suddenly old. I just feel like it's never been a great film. I think it's just I feel like I'm reviewing this the same way I would have reviewed it if I'd watched it in 1992, for instance. I think it's flawed in the same way that it was flawed back then. Of course, some of it's cheesy, and of course, some of it has aged. There's the computer stuff being the obvious kind of culprit here. But fundamentally, I think it's always been a flawed film. It remains a flawed film, but it's got a lot of iconography. It's still fun. But yeah, 3 stars. Yeah. And
that's why I like going back to these films. Like I said, they were our premise is we go back to the films that we watched when we were kids, that we liked. We want to go back and see if they were any good. It used to start off as the 80s. We've done a bunch of 90s stuff. We may have gone into 2000, so we're getting a bit older as we watch. But the films we watched previously that we loved. The reason why I'm bringing it up like that premise is because I'm going to try and shoehorn a little plug for another podcast.
Okay, go for it.
Right.
Go for it.
So I want to talk about Men Staring at Goats, the Staring at Goats podcast by John and Simon. These 2 guys, they're 2 Welsh guys as well. And what they do, they look at films deemed the greatest of all time. So they go back to these films people have deemed the greatest of all time. Are they great? Do they stand? Can the 2 boys add them to their GOAT list, as it were? And they've shocked me a couple of times, because you actually mentioned it last week, Shawshank Redemption. I'm still not happy with John for not putting it on the GOAT list. But you're not a huge fan of Shawshank. I don't.
No, I'm a massive fan. I wouldn't. I think I mentioned the fact that I wouldn't necessarily want to do it for this podcast because it's a bit too much of a bummer. It's like you telling me. It's like, oh, I know it's not quite in the same league, but it's like, oh, let's do fucking Schindler's List next week. It's like, how about not? Like, don't get me wrong.
You were going to go Schindler's List.
Well, it's just like another film which is really fucking good, but really quite depressing. And I know it ends up being quite uplifting, but it does involve a rape scene. So No, I actually think Shawshank Redemption is a really good film, and I think it totally holds up. Yeah. I know it is an interesting premise for a podcast.
I actually ran into John today while I was in the town centre, and I said I still can't forgive you for not putting it on the GOAT list. So, but they've done quite a few episodes now. They've looked at the likes of Lion King is their latest one. They've done a Muppets Christmas Carol like we did. It's interesting. Go back and listen to our episode, and then listen to their Muppets Christmas Carol, where they both loved it, whereas we were, well, one of us loved it and one of us was quite unsure.
So that's 3-1 in favour of love, yeah, just to be clear.
just to be clear, if we're scoring it down. But, sorry, this is meant to be a plug for them, and we keep coming back to ourselves. But no, please go ahead and listen to the Men Staring at Goats podcast. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. They're killing it over there.
Yeah. Well, it's not a million miles from us, but it's taking a slightly different approach. And I do think it's interesting because you have a similar issue with stuff like video games, like this whole idea, like if you have like a list of the greatest games of all time, and the same with films, you can kind of get caught somewhere between, well, is it still great, or was it just really influential? You know, it's like if you have like Mario 64 on a list of greatest video games, it's like, yeah, it was 100% one of the greatest games of all time when it was made, certainly one of the most influential. Is it one of the best games today? I don't know. And it's the same with movies. And some films, they can have a huge influence, but they can be iterated on so much that that initial impact is subsequently lost. So you almost like have to go into it watching it two ways. Like you're fully aware of the impact it's had and the fact that it's been iterated on, and you're watching it as, you know, judging it in its own right. So yeah, it's a really interesting way to approach, you know, a list of movies. And as you said, similar to ours, but you know, going for classic films rather than us just going for films we thought were fun back in the 80s, I suppose.
But speaking of films that we thought were fun back in the 80s, I want to put this in the best Liam way possible. What piece of cinematic history are we watching next week?
Oh, well, it's not cinematic history. And again, I think this is going to fall into the same category as Weird Science, because I wasn't convinced that Weird Science was a great film when I was younger. And I feel exactly the same way about Cobra, a film we have to cover because it's absolutely ludicrous. And obviously, if nothing else, it's got one of the best posters of all time. Like, whatever you might make of the film, the poster of Sly Stallone with the toothpick, the gun, the red background, it's fucking dope. The film itself, I wasn't crazy about it when I was younger, but I haven't seen it in a long old time. And I am genuinely looking forward to revisiting it because all of my memories about it, I was like, it can't be as crazy as I remember it being. I think it might be, but we'll find out next week. So
I can't wait to watch this. Can I make one suggestion?
Yeah, go for it.
When you rewatch this film, look at the way this psycho eats pizza.
Okay, that has no recollection. Like that's I'm not going, oh yeah, the dude eating pizza. I can't remember that at all. But I will look out for the psycho eating pizza.
This psycho being Cobra. Look at the way Cobra eats fucking pizza. The dude,
so Sylvester
Stallone eating a pizza.
Okay, well, that's got me intrigued, if nothing else. So, yes, please do join us next week for Cobra and Stallone eating pizza like a lunatic, apparently. And thank you for listening to this episode of Weird Science. I think that's it. Cheers, guys. Well, thanks.
I haven't even waited till next week to pick out a weird thing from a film. I've actually just pointed out.
Well, I am genuinely looking forward to seeing Stallone eating a pizza, which is a very strange statement to make, but this is the world we live in. So, yeah, thanks for listening. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys.
Oh, and before we forget, here is Rob with all the finer details. Got to get through those, dude.
Yeah, so basically you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at HeyYouGuys80s. We're also on email at HeyYouGuys80s@gmail.com. Please feel free to drop us any recommendations, any corrections or omissions we may have missed from any of the films that we've covered. Just get them in. And also, if you could, please leave us some 5-star reviews. That would really help us. And we'd like to thank, as always, Darry Fletcher at Darry Doodles for the fantastic artwork that we're now producing. Thanks for that, mate.
Cheers, Darry.
Yeah. And thanks again for listening, and we will see you next week.
Cheers. Bye.